Northern Virginia is one of the best places to live in the entire country, as this region features a world-class education system, unlimited career opportunities, close proximity to Washington, D.C., a great place to raise a family, and so much more. But living in Northern Virginia isn't for everyone. So why would anyone want to leave this area? Well, in this week's video, we're going to dive into the top 8 reasons why people are leaving Northern Virginia. And make sure you watch this video all the way to the end, because number 8 on this list is hands down the number 1 reason why people are fleeing Northern Virginia as fast as possible. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss it, so let's dive right into it. Boom! Hey everybody, it's David, your favorite realtor. So this YouTube channel is all about living and moving to Northern Virginia, and I believe it's a fantastic place to live overall. However, this area is not going to be for everyone. In fact, I remember when I relocated to Northern Virginia from Florida back in the year 2000, I was ready to move right back. And moving here was a huge adjustment for me, as the lifestyle in Florida is night and day different compared to the lifestyle here in Northern Virginia. But I stuck it out. It definitely took me a few years to adjust, but I'm glad I stayed. But I've definitely noticed an uptick of people leaving Northern Virginia recently. So let's dive into the first reason why people are leaving Northern Virginia, and that's going to be retirement. So Northern Virginia is a great place to live, but not so much if you're retired, as this region is a very fast-paced, competitive, career-driven, go area. In fact, the number 1 reason why people relocate to Northern Virginia and stay in this region is because of their career. But when you retire, you're officially out of the rat race, and you're not tied to having to live in this area anymore. So it's time to kick back, enjoy the fruits of your labor, and get out of town. So retired residents usually move to lower cost and warmer states like the beaches in Florida or the beaches in the Outer Banks in North Carolina. I've even seen people retire and go to the mountains in Denver. Basically anywhere that's completely different than this region. So when you're retired, you realize I can live in my dream location for the same amount or even way less than I'm paying to live here. So it ends up being a no-brainer to leave this area once you retire. Now, the only reason why retired residents actually end up staying in Northern Virginia is because their grown-up kids still live in the area. They want to be close to their kids and their grandchildren, so that makes total sense. But if their grown children have moved out of state, then they have no reason to stay here. So without question, one of the biggest reasons why people are leaving Northern Virginia is retirement. Now, the next reason why people are leaving Northern Virginia is career opportunities. So one of the biggest pros about this area, and it's the number 1 reason why people relocate to Northern Virginia in the first place, is the career opportunities. So this is definitely a great area to advance your career, but there's also many great career opportunities throughout the country. Whether you're going to be working for the same company and transferring to another location, or you move into a completely new company or even industry. Now, one of the best things about leaving Northern Virginia for a new career opportunity is if you can get similar salary or even more, it can be a double win. So let me share with you a very common scenario. So back in 2022, I had this family reach out to me from Florida who wanted to relocate to the Leesburg area. And they had found me via my YouTube channel. Well, I helped them purchase a townhouse here about 3 years ago. Well, 6 months ago, they called me. They're like, David, we're leaving Northern Virginia. We're moving to Tennessee. And naturally, I'm like, oh, why would you leave this area? You know, you love your house, you love the schools, you love this area. So what's taking you to Tennessee? Well, they said, we got a great new job, higher salary, plus the cost of living in Tennessee is way lower and no state income tax. So in their situation, is basically getting a double raise. And not to mention, they bought a beautiful single family home in Tennessee for $450,000. That is mind-boggling. That gets you a condo here in Northern Virginia. So leaving Northern Virginia for a new career opportunity is probably one of the most common reasons why people are leaving the area. Now, as much as I love making YouTube videos about living right here in Northern Virginia, what I love even more is helping folks just like you relocate to the area. So if you're even thinking about moving to Northern Virginia, reach out to me, give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email. Just know I got your back when you move into Northern Virginia. The next reason is a lot of people just don't like it here. And it's usually not for one particular reason, but a combination of a lot of things. And most of these things are pretty small, but they definitely add up. So you mainly see this with people who have relocated to the region here in the past 5 years. So what are some of these reasons? First, Virginia has the highest personal property tax rate, aka the car tax. And in fact, last year for my 2 cars, I paid $2,800. And then you have traffic, as this is one of the worst traffic areas in the entire country. In fact, it's always ranked in the top 10 worst traffic areas in the entire country. Then you have toll roads everywhere in the region. And it seems like the best commuting options always require a toll. And just like anything else in life, the toll fares keep going up. And then summers here are hot, humid. We get a ton of bugs like mosquitoes and the spotted lanternflies, which have been everywhere this summer. I literally can't even go to my rooftop terrace because every time I go up there, there's 100 of these bugs. Then you have 2 airports in the region, which is awesome, by the way, but that comes at a price, as you're gonna hear airplane noise all throughout the region. And then you have the extremely high cost of housing, but we're gonna tackle that later on in the video. So besides high cost of housing, not one of these things would cause someone to leave the area, but a combination of a lot of these things causes people to pack their bags and say, see ya, Northern Virginia. Now the next reason why people are leaving Northern Virginia is hybrid work. So as we all know, since the pandemic, remote work has become the norm. However, these past couple years, a lot of companies have shifted to hybrid work, which basically means you have to go in the office 1 to 3 times per week. And my wife falls in this category. We live in Ashburn. Her office is in DC, and she has to go in 1 to 2 times a week. Now imagine working and earning a Northern Virginia salary, still being within commuting distance of the region, but living in an area with a much lower cost of housing. Now this sounds like a fantasy, but with hybrid work, it's not. Now let's say your office is located in Arlington, but you only have to go in 1 or 2 a week. So now in this scenario, you don't have to live as close to the office as possible. And now you can explore the more affordable areas outside of Northern Virginia's 4 major counties. So I've seen a lot of people move to areas like Winchester, Stafford County, Fauquier County, and West Virginia, to name a few. In all these areas, you can find a great single family home for under $600,000. So what does this look like? So let's say you end up buying a beautiful single family home in West Virginia for $550,000, but your office is located in Arlington and you have to commute into the office 2 a week. Well, that commute from West Virginia to Arlington, it's about 62 miles, and it'll take you about 2 hours to get to and from the office during rush hour. Now, if you had to do that commute 5 days a week, that's not sustainable. Definitely don't do that. But if you only have to do it 1 or 2 a week, then that commute is definitely doable, and not to mention all the money you save by moving to West Virginia, as opposed to living as close to Arlington as possible. I've also seen a lot of Northern Virginia residents move farther out, like to the Richmond area, which is in Central Virginia, where the cost of living is a fraction of what it is here. Now, if you are gonna live in Richmond but work in Northern Virginia, now that's gonna be too far of a drive in terms of commuting for work. However, you can take the train from Richmond to DC in about 2 hours. Now, the next reason why people are leaving Northern Virginia is a change of scenery. So this is when you want something new, or you just want to break the routine of the everyday life here in Northern Virginia. And the best way to do that is physically moving to another part of the country. And this is the #1 reason why Northern Virginia natives end up leaving this area, which makes sense. If you grew up here in Northern Virginia, you've been in the East Coast your whole life, so you may want to switch it up, move to the West Coast, or move to the South like in Florida. Or you want to live in a big city like New York or Chicago. Or you want to live in a small town near the mountains in Utah. In fact, one of my good friends / clients just did this. It's a married couple, both born and raised here in Northern Virginia, both very successful. But one day they just said, we want to change the scenery. They packed their bags and moved to the beaches in Florida. And they absolutely love their new life and do not regret leaving this area whatsoever. In fact, if I was ever to personally leave Northern Virginia, it would be for this exact reason right here. Now, the next reason why people are leaving Northern Virginia is military relocation. So in our region, we have the Pentagon, Fort Belvoir, and Quantico. So this area has a huge military presence. And military families usually only get stationed here for 2 to 3 years before their PCS orders come in and sends them off to places like North Carolina, Texas, or even overseas. So when those PCS orders come in, they have to move. And it's not about being unhappy here. In fact, a lot of those families who are relocating out of the area, it feels up to them. They would stay in Northern Virginia, but orders are orders. So lots of families PCS to our region and lots of families PCS out of our region. So it's a constant rotation, which really adds to Northern Virginia's turnover rate. Now, the next reason why people are leaving Northern Virginia is desire for a slower pace of life. So this is a big one for people who've relocated to our region these past 5 years. As Northern Virginia is not a slow-paced, blue-collar town whatsoever. It's a very affluent, career-driven, fast-paced area, which is a huge difference for people coming from quieter, more laid-back regions. In fact, 95% of the people you meet here in Northern Virginia, they're right in the middle of the rat race, where they're striving for more success, the next big promotion, more money, or even higher status, which can make this region a very competitive and high-pressure environment. So when you relocate to Northern Virginia, it's gonna be a huge adjustment, especially if you're coming from a slower paced lifestyle. And I went through this myself. Like I said, I moved to Northern Virginia in the year 2000 from Jacksonville, Florida. And the pace of life in Jacksonville was way slower compared to here, and it took me years to get accustomed to this new lifestyle. So this is one of the top reasons why people who relocate here end up leaving the area, as they found it very hard to adjust to this new fast-paced lifestyle. Now, the number one reason why people are leaving Northern Virginia as fast as possible is the high cost of living. As Northern Virginia is one of the most expensive places to live in the entire country. And the two biggest factors to the high cost of living is the high cost of housing and the high cost of daycare. So the overall median sales price of a home here in Northern Virginia comes out to $720,000. Now let's compare that to the nation as a whole, where the median sales price comes out to $442,000. So housing in Northern Virginia is 70% more expensive compared to the nation as a whole, and that is a mind-blowing number. And not to mention that median sales price is $720,000. That doesn't get you a single family. That gets you a really nice townhouse, maybe 3 bedrooms, 3 bath, 2,200 square feet with a 1-car garage. In fact, my in-laws are leaving Northern Virginia for this exact reason, as they're about to retire, so they're gonna be on a limited budget, and the cost of living here is just way too much. So what they're doing, they're selling their single family home in South Riding and using the proceeds to buy a new construction single family home in West Virginia for only $545,000. And to put that into context, that $545,000 house that they're buying easily be $1 million home right here in Northern Virginia. And then you have the high cost of daycare, and this will definitely become your highest non-housing expense. So my wife and I live in Ashburn, and for daycare for our 2-year-old toddler, we pay $2,300 per month. And yes, you heard that right, $2,300 a month. That one hurts quite a bit, and that's pretty much par for the course. When I was doing my research on daycares, I literally called the 15 closest daycares to my house, and they're all in that $2,100 to $2,500 per month price range. Now to put this into context, the national average daycare rate is $1,372 per month. So my wife and I are basically paying almost $1,000 more a month compared to the national average. So this one definitely hurts a lot. But good news is, I only have 3 more years until my daughter starts kindergarten. This monthly expense will be off the books, but I'm sure there'll be some new monthly expense I've not even foreseen. So high cost of living ties in with everything else on this list, as people work hard for the money and they want to get as much value as possible, even if it means leaving this area for attractive states like Florida, Texas, and Tennessee, because those states offer no state income tax, cheaper homes, and strong job markets. So without question, high cost of living is the number one reason why people are fleeing Northern Virginia as fast as possible. And if you want to learn more about living right here in Northern Virginia, check out these videos right here. They're going to be great ways to continue your research. And I'll see you in the next video.